National Assembly beams its searchlight on orphanages in the capital city. You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. Before the National Assembly went on break for the Easter holiday, the House of Representatives passed through second reading a bill to regulate the activities of orphanages in the Federal Capital Territory. The bill intends to curb harmful practices in orphanages in Abuja, which may arise because they are not registered, and address the menace of sale of babies, illegal adoptions, child trafficking, and abuse of children. Later on in the program, we'll be speaking with Wanda, the founder of the Wanda Adu Foundation, to discuss this legislation. But first, this report. The House of Representatives has passed through second reading a bill to regulate the activities of orphanages in the Federal Capital Territory. It is titled the Federal Capital Territory Orphanage Registration and Regulatory Agency Bill 2020. The bill is sponsored by Representative Babatunde Adejare, who introduced it on July 5, 2020. The intention of the proposed legislation is to prevent illegal charity homes and orphanages and baby factories in Abuja. According to Representative Adejare, the bill seeks to regulate the establishment and administration of orphanages and homes for neglected children to prevent the current trend towards baby factories and other related institutions in the Federal Capital Territory.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the bill on our House to establish the Federal Capital Territory Orphanage Registration and Regulatory Agency to regulate the establishment and administration of orphanages and other related institutions in the Federal Capital Territory of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and for related matters now be read the second time.
According to the bill, where an offence under this bill is committed by an individual, the person shall be liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine not exceeding 5 million naira or both. Where an offence under the bill is committed by an organization, the organization shall be liable to a fine not exceeding 10 million naira. The bill proposes the establishment of an agency with specific duties. The agency shall formulate policies and guidelines for the registration and regulation of orphanages and other related institutions. The agency will coordinate, monitor and evaluate the activities of orphanages and other related institutions and develop, implement and review models for the implementation of policies and guidelines on the administration and regulation of orphanages and related institutions in the FCT. According to the bill, the board will be made up of the minister in charge of matters relating to women and children, who will be the chairman. Others in the board are a representative not below the rank of a director of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, Nigerian Immigration Service, Ministries of Women and Children Affairs, as well as Budget and National Planning, Finance, Health, Justice and Youth Development.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I think this is a very good piece of legislation. And like he said, this is to curb trafficking and all kind of things that people do these days. Baby factories that, of course, we've had over the years where people open up a place and they say they are doing orphanages only for them to recruit our young girls from school and kidnap them, so to speak, in quote, and house them in those homes and allow them to get pregnant, and then they start selling those babies. And I believe that this bill, when it's passed, is going to curb this menace. And there shall be sanctions for people who do this kind of things. Because if there are no regulations, if there is no approval, and people keep opening up all sorts of things and then start giving out babies in terms of, that they're adopting, when they don't have the powers to do so, then that's why, as we speak today, you have a lot of rituals, you have a lot of things going on because children are all over the place from people who are not supposed even to handle them. So I believe that this bill will help a lot in curbing this menace of baby factories and child kidnapping. And of course, you see from investigation, we've seen that these people are not even trained. All sorts of people just have a bacha and they bring girls and they quarantine them there and have them have people get them pregnant, and they sell babies, and they call it orphanages. I think this will curb the menace.
This is not the first time the House of Representatives is seeking to regulate the activities of orphanages. The House had on February 15, 2022, passed for second reading a similar bill seeking to regulate the activities of orphanages around Nigeria, including registration of the centers, operators, and children. The proposed legislation was titled A Bill for an Act to Establish a Federal Orphanage Regulatory Agency to coordinate and regulate all forms of children under the care of orphanage homes or centers. The proposed legislation is also intended to certify for proper management, especially monitoring and evaluating on the hygiene conditions, the total number of incoming orphans demographically in the centers, and outgoing of orphans to any destination through record keeping to avoid mismanagement or corruption within the orphanage homes generally and for related matters. The bill is ultimately intended to protect the rights and safety of children. We're still looking at the bill to regulate orphanages in the Federal Capital Territory. I had a chat with Wanda Ebe, the founder of Wanda Foundation, which advocates for child and women's rights, to discuss this proposed legislation. Hello, Wanda. Thanks for joining us on the Gavel. Now, the House of Representatives is proposing a legislation to regulate the administration of orphanages in the Federal Capital Territory. As your organization handles issues of child rights and women's rights, and you deal with this with orphanages in the FCT, do you think that this bill is necessary and timely?
Yes, in my opinion, it's necessary. And there are several reasons why I think it's necessary for the activities of orphanages to be regulated. And one of those reasons are the fact that there are so many sharp practices going on in orphanages around the FCT. Example, some orphanages are operating as adoption agencies, and this is illegal and has caused a lot of issues. As the CEO and founder of Wanda Foundation, working with vulnerable children, orphans, abused women and girls, a lot of people actually walk up to me to talk to me about adopting, giving up children for adoption, the vulnerable children. But it looks really tempting. Some people even actually offer you money because they are desperate to have children and all of that. But because I know that the organization was not registered as an adoption agency, we turned down those offers. So orphanages are supposed to also honor that and run as orphanages. And a lot of times, some orphanage homes do not actually admit orphans. They bring, relatives from maybe villages or anybody who they know around that are not doing well. They go and just gather those children so that they will have crowd. And then when they are real orphans, they turn them down. They tend to turn them down because they don't know their background or history or anything like that. So it has been a big challenge. And I think that it's a great move for the House of Rep to do this. And one more thing, orphanages these days, some of them even turn down the kind of items, the kind of materials that you donate to them. Sometimes you take good used clothes, really clean used clothes, and they say, no, the clothes must come with tags. You take, maybe there was a loss of child, and, the bereaved mother decides to move everything the child had used, even half-used diapers and other, toiletries. And some orphanages actually turn down some of those things because they want them to come brand new. And we've paid a visit to several other orphanages. And what they do is they tell you that they'll give a list of what they expect you to donate to them. I mean, they are donations, they are free will givings. You should not decide what people have to give to vulnerable children and are in need. So yes, it should be regulated.
Now, some of the reasons which the lawmaker who proposed this legislation gave for the reason behind, this bill is that there's been some irregularities and unsavory practices by some orphanages in the FCT and even indeed across the country, issues like child buying, illegal adoption and child abuse. In your work, the work of your foundation, have you observed these problems in your dealings with orphanages?
In my organization, we try as much as we can, to do advocacies, to notify people on what they need to do and what they do not need to do, how wrong it is and how it can be really implicating to act as an adoption agency, for example. I mean, the mother of the child could wake up and come one day that she's no longer interested. It's like child trafficking. When you take a child from a young mother who really cannot cater for the child and is desperate to give the child up, to pay her a token for taking that child, that's trafficking. That's human trafficking. So we try as much as possible to discourage those things. Young girls actually do come. Young girls who got pregnant out of wedlock, they actually do approach us with pregnancies to say that, look, I don't want this baby. The father of the child has denied this pregnancy and I would like to give the child to you. Just help us, connect us to somebody who can pay us for this child. Those people actually come to us, to my organization. And we turn them down normally. We just try to support them, do fundraising, medical care, child support. Those are all the kind of support we give to them to ensure that those kind of things do not happen, to discourage the mothers from practicing such lifestyle.
Wanda, how would you evaluate the FCT administration in how it regulates the activities of orphanages and such organizations in the FCT?
I don't think they've been efficient enough, because if they were efficient enough, this kind of things will not be going on. It will not be rampant. Orphanages will not actually stop people from paying children visits and giving them items, unapproved items, so to say, because they're probably used or, I'm not saying that people should take expired products. Those ones definitely should not be acceptable by any orphanage home. But I think that the FCTA can do more, a lot more, to monitor the activities of orphanage homes in the FCT, so that things like selling children, or giving up children for adoption, so to say, and child trafficking, and depriving the real orphans of the benefits that they should have, the care that they should be given, the materials and support that they need, that people have brought to them, they should have them. These things have to be put under check and control.
Now, this bill to regulate orphanages in the FCT is proposing the creation of an agency which will be in charge of administering and regulating the activities of these orphanages. What would you expect from this agency if this bill is assented to by President Buhari?
I expect that it's not just about writing laws or passing bills on regulating activities. I want to see these things actually being implemented. I want to see that everything is working according to how it is put down on paper and signed. I want to see that there's less child trafficking or zero child trafficking if possible. I want to see that real orphans are really getting care and support that they need, and not just random children. I want to see that when people actually take out of the little or the much that they have to donate to orphans and vulnerable children, they actually get those things and they're not being diverted or sold to enrich the managers of orphanage homes. So I want to see implementation practically.
Now, we know this legislation is mainly for the FCT, but there is actually another law, another proposed legislation also in the House of Representatives to also regulate orphanages across the country. But what would you propose to the government, or state governments rather, in solving these issues of these problems in orphanages in the country, problems of child abuse, illegal adoption, baby factories? What are the solutions?
With the help of agencies like NAPTIP, they can also carry out activities such as paying periodic visits to several orphanages across the country, not just the FCTA. But if we want to focus on those in the FCTA, yes, NAPTIP should do that. They should have a unit who will focus on visiting several orphanages, spot checks to see that the children are doing well. They should also, those monitoring checks will really help, and have periodic meetings, conferences with owners or people who run and manage orphanage homes, so that they will know, exactly how to treat the children that are in their care.
Public transportation is a huge problem for residents of the Federal Capital Territory. Commercial buses and taxis are in short supply, and there is often a rush in the mornings and evenings when commuters try to get vehicles to transport them to work and business places or back home. Now, previous FCT administrations have purchased buses and taxis to address this problem, but curiously, these vehicles have been dwindling in their numbers on the roads. A federal lawmaker in the House of Representatives apparently observed this problem and has raised a motion to investigate the whereabouts of the vehicles purchased by the FCT administration. The House of Representatives has adopted a motion to investigate the status of the 10,000 transit buses provided by the FCT administration since 2003. Lawmakers say these buses are disappearing from the roads in the FCT and the remaining ones are not effectively managed.
The House knows that the provision of long buses in Abuja, apart from creating jobs and generating revenue, is targeted at alleviating the sufferings of the citizens, as it was designed to ease the commuting challenges of civil and public servants to and from their offices to ensure effective discharge of their duties. Also notes that between 2003 and 2007, 5,000 buses were provided by the government to assist and complement the efforts of the government workers in accessing various offices within the Federal Capital Territory. Further notes that between 2010 and 2014, the federal government, in a bid to effectively improve public service delivery in line with global best practices, provided an additional 5,000 buses for the transportation of civil servants. Concerned that all the buses amounting to 10,000 provided by the government are gradually disappearing from the roads and are not being effectively managed by the FCT administration, and as such, not achieving its core objective, which is alleviating the transport challenges of the masses, especially in these trying times. Also concerned that the citizens who are denied these services are daily faced with the risk of riding in commercial vehicles operated by kidnappers, armed robbers, and bandits. Cognizant of the need to recover the buses and make them operational to serve the core objectives for which they are provided, the House resolves as follows: to mandate the Committee on the Federal Capital Territory to investigate the alleged disappearance of transit buses provided by the federal government for transport services within the Federal Capital Territory, to recover them and report back within 3 weeks for further legislative action.
We spoke to Nigerians on the streets of Abuja to find out if they have observed the disappearance of these buses and how this impacts their daily commute.
I've noticed that, at the beginning of last year, I observed something like there is a card they give to transport users that you can just recharge anytime. Anytime you can even give your relation, and when they use the system, if they want to travel, you don't want to take a bus from Madala to Area 1 or to Wuse. You just give them the card. If it's charged, they will just swipe it via their machine, and they will just collect the money that is for them, for the transport. So but toward the ending of this year, last year, I think the system was not working anymore. I don't know.
We have the Ministry of Transportation, and they, through synergy with the Federal Capital Territory Authority, FCT, can work towards providing better means of transportation. I think we have L5 buses, but they are not readily available. Take, for instance, the one that commutes people from Nyanya only ends up at Bega. So going back home now, before it will reach Secretariat here, it's already filled to capacity. So we will have to use other means, and it's really a huge challenge for us. So I think they should look towards providing, because the city is expanding, and thereby there needs to be an expansion when it comes to the vehicles that are made available for people.
The solution is for government to buy more bus and subsidize it. That's the issue. If they buy more bus and subsidize it, at least the private, commercial bus cannot increase it now because people will abandon them and patronize this government bus. That's the issue. The only solution is that government should buy more bus and subsidize the bus because it's affecting people.
And we heard that the government is providing vehicle, but the vehicle is nowhere to be found. So we don't know what is happening. We don't know what is happening. They should try and provide the vehicle so that going to office, to fro will be very, very easy for us. Especially with the civil servant. The salary is not increasing. The salary is static. And in the office, There's nothing like increment. So let there be a way they help us to go about our business.
We also asked them how this impacts their daily commutes.
Every bus stop now is 200 naira. Every bus stop. As a civil servant, it affects us a lot. It affects us a lot. Government should do something about it. I don't know what government is doing this. At least they're supposed to buy more bus to help the civil servant and the masses. Because one thing with Nigeria is that anything that go up, it's impossible to come down. So government should do everything, anything they can do to help us.
One thing about this country now, when there's scarcity of fuel, you increase the transport. But there's fuel everywhere now, but the transport stay high. Why? That would be a question we ask ourselves, you know. In this country, anything that goes up doesn't come down again. So the poor man are suffering. We are suffering like before. From here to Maraba is 100 naira. Now you pay 200, 300. Why? So we are suffering and the salary is not increasing. We earn the same money we earn when we pay 100 naira. Now that we are paying 300 naira, you are earning the same money. So how will you feed your family?
Especially with the civil servants. You hardly can couple with the scarcity of fuel. The transportation is telling on everybody. On daily basis, motorists, they'll be increasing the prices of the transport, which is not telling on us telling on us a good. It's not favorable to us at all.
You know, before you just get 15 naira from even just SAS, Abattoir to Upper Bridge. But now it's 100 naira. So things are getting worse. Not that things are becoming better. I think if there are some other ways that the government can do something about it by providing not all these like refined transport, but something with minimized price that anybody can access. The FCT minister should know what to do, and where the Minister of Transport, let them do something like railway track that we have now that are coming like from airport to the town. They can decrease the price. People that are coming from the airport side, they can just walk toward the airport and enter a train and come to the center of the city.
This is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.